Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network. Welcome back to the show. Barbara Greene, our certified orofacial myofunctional therapist, joining us live here today to talk more about this amazing work she does in helping so many people. Tonguethrust.com. That's her website. And again, she's the owner of Orofacial Myofunctional Therapy at Tongue Thirst. Again, that's the name of the company. How are you?
I am well, thank you.
Well, first and foremost, it's exciting to have you back here. You taught me a lot last week. And, we have new time listeners. So give us a little overview about what you do.
Well, myofunctional therapy is a program of retraining the muscles of the mouth and face for anyone who has been diagnosed with a tongue thrust. And this is so important because most people don't know that this therapy even exists. And it is not taught to medical doctors and pediatricians. It's not taught to dentists or orthodontists for the most part. But because there's sleep apnea as a problem now, and because people can actually die from sleep apnea, myofunctional therapy is finally getting attention that it deserves, because so many people are mouth breathers, and so many people sit with their tongue down low in their mouth. And when they swallow, all of the motion is forward instead of up and back.
Yeah.
So in reality, we should always have our mouth closed, breathing through our nose, and our tongue should be against the top of the mouth. So my therapy process is to retrain the muscles. And we had several pictures last week that we ran out of time to finish. So if you want to share screen, I can pick up today where we left off last week.
Absolutely. Share your screen, Barbara Greene. Thank you so much. And I was telling her before we got on, what she showed last week, seeing is believing and understanding. And she really has, a lot of information. And to share it like this on the Zoom, if you're not on the Zoom, make sure you go to the website. And of course, sure, she'll have them posted, tonguethrust.com. And it's just so informational to see the difference in the therapy that she offers. And again, me being a mom of a 7 and 9-year-old, it's just blows me away to see allergies, congestion. Guess what? We were at the allergist last week, and guess what? My other son's already getting shots. My other one now needs shots. So this is interesting. Neck and body posture. Whoa.
So allergies are very interesting because it has so much to do with how your nose is filtering air. So that's the problem if you're a mouth breather, because the air that you're breathing in through your mouth is not heated, it's not filtered of dirt and dust and dander, and it's not being, bacteria is not being killed.
Okay.
And the other problem is that it's dry.
Yeah.
So the opposite is true when you're breathing through your nose.
Okay.
The air is filtered, the air is warm to the body temperature, and the bacteria are killed, and the air is cleaned of all the dust and stuff that are in the air. So then the lungs aren't reacting to bad air that it's receiving. So most of my patients who come in with allergies and congestion problems, at the end of therapy, have either no more allergies and congestion, or it's far less, like 80% reduced. And that's because of the air that they're breathing is now coming through their nose, and they're filtering that air. So it's a huge, huge change from beginning to the end of their 4 or 5 months of therapy. So just to look at this young lady who had severe allergies, she also had a severe lateral lisp. So whenever she said an S word, it was sister type of thing. And she had been in speech for several
Mm-hmm.
and had not corrected it. And so we did her therapy. And remember, I don't remember exactly what we discussed last time as far as symptoms, but with the symptoms that we see in patients,
Okay.
it's congestion, it's the allergies,
Yep.
it's poor
Oh.
sleeping habits, it's
Mm-hmm.
also uh, the long, longer face syndrome and a flatter face syndrome. And many
Okay.
times they're asymmetrical.
Interesting. Yep.
Their
Mm-hmm.
eyes don't match, their face doesn't match in shape. And I can almost always tell you how they sleep
Yeah.
on their sides or on their stomach just by the way their face
Wow.
is. So if you look at this young lady who is a mouth breather,
Mm-hmm.
you can see a total difference in her.
Yeah.
We had her therapy finished. So now she sits with her mouth closed, her eyes look wider open, and
Uh-huh.
her face looks more symmetrical and rounded, and she has cheeks, which you can see in this picture. So here's before, where we have a flat nasal sinus area, and look at her chin. So if you look at the nose in relationship to her chin, this
Mm-hmm.
almost be even with her nose.
Wow.
And here you see that it is. So when you sit with your mouth open, your chin is dropped down and back. And so the whole line of the facial form is incorrect. And when the chin is back this far, it's also limiting the airway.
Wow.
Whereas when the chin is forward, then
Mm-hmm.
it has more what we call posterior airway.
Got it.
And so your throat is more open. And look at her cheeks. She has
Yeah.
cheek form now.
Wow.
It makes a big difference.
Wow.
And it's her bite before we
Yeah.
started. And if she were to go to an orthodontist, which she did,
Mm-hmm. I'm sure.
her bite, an orthodontist would think that she has a cross bite. You see how her upper teeth are inside her lower teeth, and they're
Mm-hmm.
supposed to be. They're supposed to be outside.
Oh, okay. Got it.
So this side is more
Yeah.
correct. Okay, so they're outside the lower teeth. Well, one would think that she has a crossbite, but she actually doesn't. She has a muscle crossbite. So
Mm-hmm.
everything she does, remember I said she had the S to the side? So
Mm-hmm.
her tongue was always pulling her jaw to the side.
Okay.
So if you look at her bite today, see how the upper
Mm-hmm.
teeth are outside the lower teeth? And another sign is the midline of the teeth here and the midline of the teeth here. These are supposed to be lined up, whereas here they're almost perfect. So now this
Mm.
is this is how we started
Yeah.
and how we ended. So well, that's not true. This is how we started. This is how we ended. So you
Yeah.
see how she's not in a crossbite. She doesn't have a perfect bite at all.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry. But she, this is just a year later. The orthodontist decided not to do anything because he was new to myofunctional therapy. This was actually the first patient he had ever sent me. And so he wanted to see, okay, if this much correction was done just
Yeah.
by the exercises, what
Mm-hmm.
would happen if we waited a while?
Yeah. Wow.
And this is a year later. So her
Wow.
bite still isn't exactly perfect, but it's a whole lot better. And
Mm-hmm.
so he decided just to watch her and go on with uh, her orthodontics later if needed. So it was an interesting case for all of us to be observing. So the other thing that we look for is mouth breathing. And
Mm-hmm.
So everybody who is a mouth breather can look different. You'll notice here there's irritation at the corners of the lips and an irritated line under the lips also. And notice how the lips are really fatter than they should be.
Yeah.
And that's all from irritation. And
Ooh.
this area here is from saliva building up in the mouth
Oh,
and
wow.
out into the corners of the mouth. And as a result, they get sores, and sometimes they actually have a like a big cold sore at the sides of their mouth.
Mm-hmm.
But everyone is different. And this is an adult who is a mouth breather. And notice how he carries his tongue completely forward. And you'll actually see this person a little bit later, I think, and you'll notice that he has a lot of gum disease or
Yeah,
periodontal
periodontal. Yep.
because of his tongue position and because of the pressure of the tongue against
Wow.
between the teeth.
Okay.
So here's some people who, if you notice it, remember I told you about those lines. Look at
Yeah,
all
I see. Wow.
around their lips. This also comes
Wow.
from lip licking. So they're licking their lips a lot because why? They're breathing through their mouth and their lips dry
Mm-hmm.
out. So their lips get very dry. And here's an adult, and now look at her lips. She literally has permanent,
It
uh,
looks like there's permanent makeup on her, like a
yeah,
lip liner, right?
yeah,
Clearly, that's not.
exactly. And
Wow.
it's actually scarring. Yeah, she'll never
Yeah.
be able to get rid of that. So she can even have Botox
Yeah.
and still wouldn't get rid of that.
Mm-hmm.
So then we look at what do they do when they swallow. So if you
Okay.
watch a person swallow, and
Mm-hmm.
remember, we swallow once a minute at night and
Okay.
twice a minute during the day, all day
Mm-hmm.
long. And if we're using the muscles forward, then we have to use the lips to help us swallow.
Mm-hmm.
It should not be happening at all. There should be no movement whatsoever when we swallow. So it's a sure sign
Yeah.
that we're using forward muscles. Okay, and there's another sure sign. If you see a lot of scalloping and markings on the tongue, you see these indentations
Mm-hmm.
on the tongue, that means their tongue is low and spreading in their mouth. So it's constantly pushing into the teeth or actually coming across the teeth. And our tongue should not be doing that. Our
Yeah.
tongue should sit right into the shape of the top of our mouth. And this person actually had ridges on
Yeah.
the tongue. And this, you notice how it's turning white?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, that's actually pre-cancerous.
Oh, wow.
So it's very dangerous.
Okay.
We're able to get the lines gone by massaging her tongue and by training the tongue to work correctly. And so now all of this area is starting to heal and get better. So that was an exciting case to do. The other thing that we look for are enlarged tonsils. So tonsils are normal. We always have tonsils. In fact, we have 13 sets of tonsils in our mouth and body. So the tonsils are normal and they filter bacteria. But when you're a mouth breather, you're also getting all that dry, cold air that's dirty and infected. And so the tonsils have to overwork and then they get larger. So if you look back here in the back of the throat, there's huge tonsils. Now, try to remember how you swallow. You're supposed to swallow with your tongue behind your upper front teeth across the top of your mouth. And then the back of your tongue actually touches your throat. So it's filling the whole back of your throat. And that's normal. And it only lasts for about a tenth of a second, and then it comes back forward. But how can your tongue go back against your throat when you've got these golf balls here in your tonsils. So if we look at these tonsils, they're very irritated. They're probably infected. This person probably gets colds and flu and things quite frequently. So it's an important thing to remember that I am not pro-surgery normally, but with enlarged tonsils like this, if we don't remove them, then there's never going to be an ability to retrain their muscles and teach them how to swallow correctly. The other thing that we have to diagnose is whether or not this little muscle called the frenum that's under everybody's tongue is too tight. So if you look at this tongue, when they go to lift their tongue, they can't even touch the top of their mouth. And look at how this tongue looks like a heart, because this muscle here, the frenum, is too tight and it's pulling the tongue downward. So there's no way to even train this tongue to be correct. We have to have surgery to release this little muscle. And it's called a frenectomy or a lingual frenum frenectomy, or they sometimes call it a frenotomy. There is a release that they do surgically to free up this muscle. It's a relatively simple surgery, but a very important surgery, because the tongue has to look like this instead of this. So if you look at this tongue here, it's very restricted. They cannot lift, they're only lifting a little tiny bit of the tip of their tongue. And look at when they try to lift, when you look inside, then the tongue is pulled down in the center, and that muscle is really tight, and see that heart shape again. So what they do is they go in and release that muscle, and they remove parts of that tissue that are too tight. And here's before, when they're trying to point their tongue. Again, you see the heart shape. And this is just 15 days after the surgery. And now they can point their tongue, and they can place their tongue properly in the top of the mouth. So it's a very important part of the actual therapy that we have to release that. And please tell me if you don't understand anything that I'm saying.
Oh, we understand. This is so informative. Again, if you're just on the podcast, I urge you to check out the Zoomcast as well. I got to remind everyone, tonguethrust.com is the website. Barbara Greene, as a certified orofacial myofunctional therapist, you're based out of Ventura, California, but you do this work virtually. So anyone out there can reach out. Tonguethrust.com.
Yes. And I noticed on your email to me that you had spelled it tonguethirst.com. It's THRUST.
Well, that's funny because I have you down. It's tonguethrust.com. That's your website.
Yeah.
But on your sheet, I guess that you sent over, someone called the company Tongue Thirst. And I said that in the beginning of the show, and I'm like, that doesn't look right. So I'll have them correct that. I'm so sorry, but tonguethrust.com, okay?
Obviously, I can't type correctly.
It's okay.
I can do myofunctional therapy, but I can't type, evidently. So we have other frenums that we have to look at. This is a frenum under the upper lip. It's called the maxillary labial frenum.
Okay.
And this frenum should not be way down here by the teeth. So look at her lip. See how short it is?
Wow, yeah.
Well, that's her frenum holding her lip up too high. So then her lower lip has to overwork just to get closure of her lips. And so it's easier for her to sit with her mouth open because of that. So we had to have surgery on this muscle to release it and allow it to be higher up into the lip. So the other thing that we look for are narrow palates, because if your palate is narrow like this, the width of the palate is too narrow. And notice how it's vaulted, it's high up. This is what our palate should look like. It should be wider, and it should not have that much vault because your whole tongue has to fit here. Whereas in this person, we would have to have some orthodontic expansion done and make the mouth wider and then retrain the tongue so that it knows how to work correctly. And the other thing is the soft palate.
Okay.
So everyone has a soft palate. Oops, excuse me. And the uvula that hangs from the soft palate. And the soft palate's function is to lift up whenever we swallow and or cough, or it blocks the entry to the nose. So the soft palate and uvula have to be able to pull upward. But here is a patient that it's not moving at all. It's just hanging there. And the unfortunate thing is that at nighttime, it can just fall back against the throat and cut off their airway and cause sleep apnea symptoms.
Wow.
Okay. So we have to use exercises to teach the soft palate how to work. So then if we have a lot of trauma caused by this tongue thrust, notice how this gentleman has now lost a large number of his teeth just because of the pressure. And notice the plaque all over his teeth, that white, creamy looking stuff.
Yeah.
Plaque. And that's causing gum disease, and the pressure of the tongue is causing bone loss. So ultimately, he'll lose all of his teeth. But guess what? They'll try to put in dentures, and he'll never be able to wear his dentures because every time he swallows, he'll push them out of his mouth. So it's a very serious situation, no matter what age. My oldest patient has been 90. So it's not just children that I see, it's a lot of adults that I see also.
Well, at this time, we do have to wrap it up for today. My goodness, great conversation as always. How did you want to leave off for today?
Pardon?
We have to unfortunately say goodbye. How did you want to leave off with everyone?
Thank you so much. We'll continue next time.
We'd love to do that. And thank you for always being so informative. And thank you for stopping that screen. Run us one more time how we contact you. Tell us the website. Tonguethrust.com, correct?
Yes.
Great. Thank you so much, Barbara Greene. We appreciate your time here.
Are you looking for even more of the podcasts and hosts that you love? The Podcast Business News Network is proud to announce that you now have even more ways to listen live. Check out the MyTuner Radio, online radio box, and Simple Radio apps on iOS and Android, or find us online. Search for Business News Network on mytuner-radio.com, or search Podcast Business News Network on streama.com and onlineradiobox.com/US. Take your podcasts on the go and don't miss a minute of the action.
Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
For nearly 2,000 severely injured veterans, everyday life has become filled with barriers.
Day-to-day simple tasks can become pretty daunting.
I have to carry my chair up 2 flights of steps or have somebody do it for me.
What scares me the most is just the falling.
When I'm struggling with my house, I think, to have that one great barrier just knocked down, it's crucial.
Home for Our Troops is a wonderful nonprofit that builds a
mortgage-free, fully adaptive, handicap-accessible house. And there's no catch.
It'll be our very first home that we've ever owned. This is a game changer.
This is where your life begins again.
We need you to join us in completing this important mission. Please visit hfotusa.org and help build homes and rebuild lives.
Because of you, everything's going to be okay.